Next, Mike Prince, who puts stuff in the palm of your hand. I guess maybe that's what it is.
So yeah, it's a nice follow-on to the prior conversation because we're operating in a very different environment. We're operating on cell phones, and we're also additional constraint is there's no network. So we're going to jump into that right now. So I'm from Citizen 911. We're about using having citizens use smartphones to improve public safety. So a little background here, and that'll help you understand why we're doing this. Is I live in Los Altos Hills. In our area, we have about 10,000 people, and we have an elderly population too. About 25% of them are over 65, and we only have 4 firefighters. And for good or bad, we don't really need many police officers. Between 0 and 1 sheriffs out there at any time. And the USGS gives us about a 70% chance in the Bay Area at least of a 6.7 or better earthquake before 2030. And particularly alarming for Los Altos Hills is right behind us is the San Andreas Fault, and they give that a 21% chance. So, so we're living on borrowed time right now. And you can guess, the outcome of this. Injuries, of course. Gas leaks, the fire department's very interested in that. Turn off the gas as soon as you can. Water leaks. If you don't have water, you can't fight fires. And you need drinking water. So that's pretty important. And lastly, telephone service is pretty much always disrupted during earthquakes. Mexico City, a few days ago, same thing. They lost telephone service all the way up there. So with only 4 firefighters and no telephone service, how do you find the problems, let alone deal with them? And the answer, pretty obvious to most people in this room, is crowdsourcing. And what's interesting enough, female people tend to doubt them a lot, but they actually get it. And they created an organization called Citizen Corps, and specifically the CERT program for this. And CERT is Citizen Emergency Response Training. And as you can imagine, Los Altos Hills, we have a CERT program, about 150 volunteers. We have our own EOC, Emergency Operations Center. And we're trained to provide basic services, first aid, simple rescue. I think the really interesting thing we do is we can survey the town very quickly. And that's the big opportunity here for the fire department, is we can provide situational awareness for them. And that way the firefighters don't have to spend their time, the 4 firefighters, canvassing the town to find the problems at the regional level, specifically down in Santa Clara County. So if they know better what's going on, they can communicate that. They can also do the resourcing. They can affect the resourcing and begin the recovery effort. So there's a problem, and we've been doing a lot of training in Los Altos Hills, and we do everything in paper. I think that's pretty common with most of the organizations. And for this group here, we drive a lot of stuff from maps. We have paper maps in our backpacks. And you can pretty much figure they go out of date the second we get them. A lot of us lose them. We create reports. We can't find the houses we're looking for. It's probably kind of hard up there. Every time you do a full sweep through the town, it's about 3,500 properties. And so how do you merge 3,500 properties records with the 3,500 from last time around? And sometimes you have 2 people doing the same set of data, you have to merge those. It's almost impossible to do. And I think one of the really interesting problems there is how do you find gaps in reports? 2 people surveying 40 homes, so they survey 20 each. Do they survey the same 20 or different 20? And it's really hard to surface that data. So we've been prototyping some ideas last year, and beginning this year we started pulling them all together. And we have a solution. That's a smartphone application. And one of the really important parts here is working completely offline. And one of the questions I was given by somebody a few weeks ago says, can it work without a SIM card? So we actually pulled a SIM card and had to fully operate without one. Importantly, for mapping, we do parcel map surveys. So as you're actually walking around looking for houses, we actually draw the lines around the properties. We get that in a minute. And that's a really important element. When you field data transfers, again, it's seamless. So take your phone, turn off the internet, turn off everything, pull the SIM card. We can still transfer data between devices. When you field analytics, again, we go back to the prior conversation. We don't have the power of the internet. We don't have the power of really fast laptops with great graphics cards. We have these cell phones which are optimized for battery life, not for power. So we can actually do analytics on these devices. And a really fun thing we've been working with is self-replication. And I won't talk about it during this talk, so I'll go into it one more second here. But we actually have the ability, thank you, Android. If somebody has a phone across the room, we can actually fire a hotspot on one phone, transfer the application to the other device with no internet. And then that device can then pull down the rest of the data for the device and actually just clone the features of the application, which I think is a really powerful feature. Let me give you some background on this, and we'll get into the mapping part in a minute. But if you're going to be putting all the data in the device, you can't do the entire United States. So one of the simplifications we do is areas. An area is a city, university, airport, business campus, etc. And they tend to have unique emergency instructions. So on Google Campus here, if there's an earthquake, you probably have rally points to Google, and it's not the same as what Mountain View City has or Santa Clara Areas can contain others. So you might have things like FEMA, which would have kind of universal directions for everybody across the United States. You drop down to the state level for CalEMA, down to Santa Clara County, down to the city level Mountain View, and keep on going. What's fun about phones is because they know your location, they can order these. So there's a sample page on the right-hand side. The first question it says is, where are you? And you pick the best one. So here, for instance, if we were at CMU, for example, say, are you at CMU? You can back off of there and say, no, I'm actually in Mountain View. And areas are cached on the device, like I mentioned a second ago. So we actually go in, we learn the kind of areas to go to, we pull them on the device. And the important part there, like I mentioned, is that they're available when the network is down. Everything can completely fail and you still have your phone working. I think also interesting there too is that it's not just the network being down. One of the complaints I got from Chief Ron Levine from Foothill College, he said that when they have a power outage, everybody gets on their phone and it just crumples the network around there. So even during even when the network is available, congestion will cause it not to be useful. Another fun thing you can do is we can unpack the packages when they're used, and you can pack up when they're not used. So it's space efficient on the device. One more level down here is partitioning the data. And so, again, I think the talk before this is very interesting because you have access to the entire internet and very rich data in large data stores. We don't have that. We also don't have the luxury of a very powerful device to pull in a large set of data and start operating on it. So what we've done is we partition the data. And some of the simplifications we've done is we said each area, for instance, Mountain View, has a number of zones. We partition the data into the zones, so as you're looking at the zone, it pulls up that data set. And as you walk across the zones, it'll chunk the data into the device. So it makes the UI very responsive, which I think is really important on the device. Another thing I've been asked for is we're not looking at just one kind of asset. So the early version of this only looked at houses and simplification was parcels. But as you get into a disaster, we have things like water towers, we have hydrants, we have bridges, all those other good things. And so we can manage multiple asset types, and also we get into one area might have multiple kinds of zones. So if you look at CERT has their zone layout, but the water district might have their own layout, police department their own layout. You go across the board here. So we support actually multiple zones with multiple asset types across those data. One last little detail here. I've been asking around a lot of people, so if you know more about this, let me know, please. I'm looking for a unique way to identify assets across our service. And I didn't find one in my quick search, so I came up with one myself, and I call it the Physical Asset Identifier. Leverages the URIs, of course. And so this lets me do things like, for instance, use the assessor parcel numbers from a county to identify a parcel. And the good thing about this is these are global now, so I can apply this across the world. And also you can do it across different, I could have the family up there, so APM is one of my families, I could have water for another one from the water district, keep on going from there. And another really fun thing about this is once you get into analytics, you can do hierarchical ones. So for instance, if you have a college, that's one parcel, you could have buildings, you could have rooms, go right in the line there. So now we get down to what the app actually does. So you've had an earthquake, a bunch of our certs, and even actually normal citizens can have this in their pockets. They can fire it up, and they can start rendering the map, renders nice and fast. They can view all the parcel data, and as you zoom in there, it'll continue to give more and more data, or more and more detail on it. So from the far away part, it just shows the general streets and parcels. As you get closer, it'll show the address of the parcel. We're doing slippy tiles in case anyone's interested in this, and then we do overlays on top of it, is again kind of the meat of it. So if you look at this, the raw streets there, Loma Drive is part of the slippy tiles there, cached in the device. The 15 there is the zone, and the parcels are also overlays. Those are all vector on the canvas. We are able to mark homes okay rapidly on this device, which is nice, and also we can file larger reports. And I won't get into that right now, but we have an HTML5 backend doing arbitrary reports for people, which is kind of fun. How I actually mentioned this a second ago, we do slippy tiles across this. We do asset overlays, and we'll get into this in a minute. We do pluggable analytics. So what happens is, as you're looking at a map, you have multiple people looking at the same map, and they want different viewpoints. And in the domain I'm operating in right now, we have the CERT teams, which are one. We have a town, which has a very different view of what they needed. We have Red Cross looking at it. We have the Water District looking at it. We have PG&E looking at it. And so all those people will have different views of what they think is okay. One of the things I added recently, we still experiment with this, is using slippy tiles for indoor maps. I'm sure people have lots of opinions about that here. But it turned out for the survey part, I needed to support the analytics driving the generation of tiles in the device. Actually, one of my challenges given me by the Water District was, can you render 138 square miles on a cell phone? And I think we've been able to do that now using tiles. But in order to support that, I just added additional slipping maps for the additional floors there, and I believe this works just fine for indoor, for a very simple version of indoor mapping. One of the fun features I'm keeping here is not really a mapping thing. We can actually transfer reports from phone to phone. I'll get into this later. So you can be out in the field, again, no internet, as you see someone at a street corner who's gathered data from another area they've been surveying, you can bump phones, transfer the data between the phones, no internet again. One person can run to the EOC, and the rest of the people can keep on surveying, and they can survey with the data from all the people they bumped with, so you're not doing double surveying and stuff. And again, all your maps populate with whatever the other people have surveyed. I covered that. Analytics, I think, is fun. Actually, I think I already talked through most of this. Yeah, I think I covered this whole thing already. This I'm getting into now, the Miniweb and Fieldview, kind of having fun with branding right now. But the idea is that any phone can create a Wi-Fi hotspot. I'm calling them Miniwebs right now. And that lets people with other devices, your browsers, your iPads, what have you, just fire up a browser and pull data from the device. And we're pulling both ways. We're pulling tiles. So we're actually generating tiles on the device. And we're also just doing the raw JavaScript JSON stuff across the wire to do overlays on the browser. And this is an example here. This is looking at Los Altos Hills, and this is looking at against our zones and saying this is a partial survey of the town. Red's being bad, green's being good, and black's not being surveyed yet. Mashable's kind of fun, and so I'm getting into this now is where you, our service, or your little Android phone is just one of many services that another device could go and mash up the data from. So you can imagine if you're in EOC, you could take, you could have your computers there point at one of our Android devices, pull the slippy tiles, pull overlay data, generate stuff, and also have access to your own computers in your fire station, what have you, and mash everything up together, and that should be pretty powerful. This is another thing that's kind of fun. As we're getting into cell phones now, the little Android's actually pretty darn powerful, and you guys know here, it's like every 18 months, that was the old number at least, the old phones go out and new phones come in, and they typically go into a drawer. A lot of them these days I think go in kids' toy bin, out of class at least. Very, very recycled. And so actually what we're doing next month, actually in the Los Altos Hills County Fire District flyer going out to all the residents, we're actually asking the citizens to donate their old phones. We're going to put these in a big bin, we're going to wipe the phones, and a lot of times the batteries are actually dead on them. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach little $5 battery packs you can buy from a large number of places, and that will revitalize the phone. And we actually use these to affect surveys in our town. Anything else? And this is the last, I think this is the last slide how everything fits together. Just take 1 second to run through this. The idea is you just have a whole family of phones on the right-hand side. In the field, you self-activate, you go to your survey, and you walk it down to your EOC. And the cool thing about that is that any one of those phones can be the EOC. It can fire up, it can do the little Miniweb thing, you can start collecting data from all the phones around it. You don't have to have one of these phones to see the data then. You can fire up your browser on your iPad, on your laptop, whatever's lying around, and start pulling the data and doing analysis on this. One of the really fun things I've been playing with is, even if you're in the field, like you imagine you're one of these guys out here on the far outside, and you're walking down the street, and a fire truck rolls by, and you say, what's going on? You can literally fire up a hotspot on your device, the fire truck can fire up the browser, and they can look at all the reports from your device. Just really powerful stuff. So you're at the Miniweb over here at EOC. Somebody says, you gotta pass the data on, and there's no network again. So one of the guys takes his phone, sucks the data on his phone, and walks over to Los Altos Hills Town Hall, for example. They look at all the data again. It keeps on walking along until it finally finds an outlet. Let's say it takes getting to the Santa Clara County EOC to push the data out. And then it finally puts on the internet. We have a service running out there on App Engine. It'll collect all the data. And then somebody in Sacramento can go fire up their computer and look at all the data and see what's going on. So it's kind of a fun little architecture. And I think that's about it. Any questions? Questions, sir?
Can you talk with San Mateo or any other counties or towns?
So we have a group actually right behind you, Steve Ray, and he's one of the guys who runs DMI. So DMI is Disaster Management Initiative. It's down here at Carnegie Mellon on the Montauk campus. And so we get together every Monday and have a meeting. And the guys from San Mateo, you say who is it, Ray? Or who's the guy from San Mateo that goes every week?
Well, let's see.
We have one guy who goes every week from San Mateo, yeah.
Well, there's one is Altos from Michael Park.
Right. Yeah. So we have San Mateo in there. We have Marin is involved in this stuff. Santa Clara, obviously, a huge amount. Yeah, there's a large number of people involved.
It's a presentation, but people are talking about already communicating with each other on cell phones.
Right.
It's a disaster. They try to figure out who is closest to that, and they can help resuscitate the person.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a number of apps coming out for that right now. But we're looking at a couple different things here. One thing we're looking at is saying that let's plan in the worst case instead you just have no cell service, and then you build infrastructure up, which is good in that environment. We had a fun talk. It was a week ago with the National Guard, I guess. The National Guard has some really interesting technologies. They actually have one of the fun things. They have a pod. They call it Canopy. Actually, they have a pod which attaches to their C-130s. They actually run them up in the air. They fly around. They can create very localized 3G and 4G networks, Wi-Fi networks. They're actually talking about doing stuff like that for the local cities around here. I think you're doing experiment in Palo Alto next week, aren't you? Or 2 weeks from now? Ken Duker's doing that. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Ken Duker's doing one a few weeks from now with the National Guard. They're putting an antenna up on the roof of the hangar here. And they're going to beam down to a couple different spots in Palo Alto and affect communication. So a lot of really neat stuff is coming up right now. Yes?
Carnegie Mellon, about 3 or maybe 4 years ago, Martin Chris was the chair, ran a event, 2-day event, where emergency response related things were discussed about. I don't know, you were not there at that time.
This is the bigger one.
But there was one more, 2 or 3 years ago also.
2 years ago was the first, 1 year
First
ago
one
was
that
the second.
happened. And then also Palo Alto Sheriff was involved. He
Yeah.
came there and he was there. We were there till very late night.
Yep. There's lots of stuff going on right now, definitely. Any other questions? Cool.
Is there any geo-mapping data or GPS data in your survey, and is there any photos in the survey also?
But geomapping data.
Well, I'm sorry,
what
but
kind of-
just GPS location data for what you're surveying?
Yes, so we're actually having a lot of fun with that right now. So your Android device catches a lot of really great data. And so it doesn't just catch X and Y, it catches your accuracy on that one. It also catches your bearing, it catches your altitude, it catches, I think there's a few other really interesting data fields in there. And so we actually catch all that data. And so now what happens is, I think it's fascinating, is that you have a fire truck, when there's a disaster, the fire truck is asked to do a lot of them have to do a quick windshield survey. They drive a common route through the city as fast as they can. And so you have data from them showing implicit OKs in the houses as they're driving by at 25 miles an hour. And then another person would come in, like a CERT member, would say, I walked past the front of the house, and you have them walking by a few miles an hour. But they saw the front of the house. And then you have another person who actually walked around the back of the house. And so we actually capture all that data. And so now you say, okay, which of these 3 reports is the best report? The fireman who's very, very qualified to do reports, or the citizen actually walked around the back of the structure and saw the damage. So we have that stuff, and that's one of the pieces we're getting into now is the analytics component. It's saying how can you turn this really, really rich set of data here and make heads and tails of it, and then provide actionable data to the people who need it. So yes, we have that data definitely.
And as far as images, also, will there be images in the survey?
So we capture audio, we capture video, we capture pictures, of course, right now, and all that's attached to them all. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Question in the way back?
So, for example, then in Haiti, when the house gets destroyed, now they have NCP. So, in your system, do you have a way to set up the current new address even though it's empty?
So, sorry, what was the last part of that? Set up the current what?
Set up a new address, a new tent structure survey, so you know that this is a new place where people are staying. Because otherwise, what you will be doing is you will try to
there's some, I don't know if I'm going to kind of half answer your question right now. Some of the people who talk at the Monday DMI meetings are the Naval Postgraduate School. And so one of the talks, I think this was like maybe 2 months ago, they had them in. And they had this really great data for when they do flyovers, whether it's, I don't know whether it's U2s on that one or satellite. And they actually, because places like that don't have mapping data in the first place, they actually generate mapping data. And they actually generate mapping data of the structures, trying to predict which structures have collapsed, and then generate data like that for people to go out and do the surveys on that data. But I think you're asking something slightly different, saying, now we've established a tent city, and we have a new set of addresses we need to evaluate, or?
I mean, you need to record, so if, for example, we can put down that I'm here, but I used to be somewhere else, so people can find other people.
Yeah, that's outside the scope. There's people who are solving that problem now. That's outside the scope of what I'm working on right now. But yeah, that's interesting. Yes, sir. Back.
Nick Arnett, also with the DMI, on that particular thing, you said it just right. That's recovery, not response. This app is for response. But if you look at OpenStreetMap in Haiti, you'll see the amazing problems and things they've done in Haiti to try to address exactly that.
Thank you. One more?
Can the app pass through data from other sources besides the app itself? You know, if you have an application that wants to access the internet, it passes it through the Miniweb, and the browser that finally has internet access. access for everyone.
Wait, sorry, say it one more time?
Right, so in the app support, passing through data from other sources besides that, so through the Miniweb to get to the internet finally.
Could you repeat for?
Repeat that, please.
Yeah, that's right. So you're asking if the app can pass data along, like
Right, from any other source. Maybe
Yeah,
check in on Facebook to say that you're okay or something, and they can pass that data on to the
Gotcha.
internet, through the Miniweb.
Yeah, gotcha. So the Miniweb, I'm just calling Miniweb simply saying that you don't have internet. All you simply have is you have a hotspot, and you have somebody acting as a browser. We have full Jetty on the device, and the other device can talk to it and suck stuff out of it. Our structured data right now is reports and the photos, like we mentioned, the videos. We have tracks also. You can push that stuff through. We're not designed to take arbitrary data from there. I think you're talking like messaging data, like saying, like you said, a Twitter check-in or something like that. Sorry. So we don't have that capability right now. There's maybe a broader question that too, is that I just saw there's a Tennessee app that came out, I don't know how long it's been out for, and the way that they focus on doing reporting is through like the 4 primary social media channels, which is like what's Twitter and YouTube and I forget what the other 2 are in there. But the question is that actionable data, is that very useful data? And that's actually one of the questions we're working on right now actually, is people are starting to try to mine that data, but when you mine it, can you actually have something that the water department want to look at? Or the CERT team or the Red Cross, will they actually look at your data and actually use it, or are they going to ignore it because it's not a great data source? So I think that's a great question in there. 2 minutes, okay, one more question, Lily?
Okay, so how is this interactive? Like, I live in Los Altos Hills. I didn't know you made a survey of my house, and how do I find out what you wrote about my house, and when do I update my assets?
So the good thing, this is part of a, the people who care about this a lot, and I've heard some funny stories about them, is the the assessor's office. They're the people who care, because they want to tax you. So I heard, I'll give you a small funny story. There was a fire recently, and one of the guys in the booth was a government person. They're like, who are you? And the guy's from the assessor's office. And they're like, why are you here? He's like, we want to find structures that haven't been reported, so they can tax them. So the good thing is we're actually using their data source. Okay, I'll give you 1 second. So yes, so as far as the parcel data, which is very useful for us, we get that indirectly from the assessor's office.
So I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it seems like a closed system. The actual residents, it's like you looking around, you guys gather the data, it's kind of a closed, it's not interactive, and how do the actual community use it?
Well, the use case here, you could figure you could probably use this in other ways. The specific use case here is we've had a really bad earthquake.
I know that.
And we're walking around trying to figure out what hazard damage and trying to save people's lives. That's the application
There's
here.
no way for, like, if someone buys, so a resident buys a new house, moves in, so now you have your 65-year-old person's gone,
Right.
and now you have a house with young people or whatever. I mean,
Right.
there's no, it just seems to me like there should be some kind of dynamic component where
So
people can actually update their own information.
Yeah, there's 2 parts to that what you're saying right there. One is that we are using parcel data as best we can right now. Actually, there's a number of different data sources here. One is parcel data, saying that helps us identify the houses, find flagged lots, and find weird lots for homes, and just know that to even look for them. Number 2 is we use OpenStreetMaps actually, because that's a data source that allows us to copy the device and store it and what have you and pass it along. A third source is is what we're putting out right now, I think answers your question a little bit, is we're starting to ask people if they have special needs. And a lot of sort of organizations are doing that now. And that's an opt-in service where you say to your neighborhood watch or LSB that I'm a little bit older, if there's a disaster, please come to my house and knock on my door and make sure you find me. But that's all opt-in, and that's doing on a per neighborhood or per city basis. That's the question. Sorry, and one last one? Yeah.
There's another data source. Every 10 years is this census data,
Yeah.
the Department of Commerce. For the first time in 2010, the data was recorded on a coordinate system for each residence.
Yeah.
And there's some personal information there. It tells you the people who live there, their income brackets, but there's also this raw information. It tells you the location of each house exactly, in the United States.
Yes, so the gentleman just mentioned there's lots of rich data from different sources, like the census in this example. So we're just scratching the surface here right now. And so this is, again, we're going to be adding a lot more interesting stuff to this as time goes on. So I think we're done. Great, thank you very much.